The second topic that I would like to cover today is something that is going to guide you through the rest of the Fab Learning Academy. It's what we call the digital fabrication continuum in education. So this defines how you can use digital fabrication in education. And actually, this is something that we have been discussing between the program for a long time. So how digital fabrication is used in school environments. And we realized that we can divide this continuum in three different parts. First of all, there are cases in which we have what we call digital fabrication for kids. In this sense, the kids are not part of the digital fabrication process, any aspect of the digital fabrication process, but teachers, they produce some content, some material that they can integrate into their classes. They support their classes. I'm going a little bit much more in depth in the following slides. Then in the other end of the continuum, we have the digital fabrication by kids. In this case, the kids, they perform all the tasks that I have shown you before. So you perhaps propose them a problem, and then the kids go follow all these steps in the design process model until they get something that solves the problem or try to solve the problem that you propose them. And all the aspects of ideation, all the aspects of design, fabrication, choosing the tools, they are on their own. So there is no intervention of teachers, just perhaps in some guiding or giving support and so on. We will cover this some other day. And then in between, we have what we call digital fabrication with kids, that basically this is most of the projects that you are going to run in school, they are in the middle or in between this continuum. And this continuum is going to define how many tasks or how many aspects of digital fabrication the kids are going to work with. So for example, it might be in some points that perhaps you provide already the ideation process, so you provide a possible solution. So the kids, they just need to design and fabricate something in which, based on what is your proposal, or perhaps you don't even go to the fabrication part. You just ask the kids to start thinking on solutions and start proposing solutions using the 16 tools. But perhaps you don't have time for them to implement it. Or perhaps you go to the design aspect, but you provide already some parts already designed for them. And here what you do is, okay, you need to complete the missing part. So you need to try to find something that, using what you have now, you can reach your goal, your objective. And as you see, the use of digital fabrication is very broad in this case. So you can use digital fabrication in many steps of the design process model and for many different purposes. So if we go a little bit in detail in digital fabrication for kids, we are building, or the teachers are building, something that supports their learning. It can be manipulative, it can be gadgets that support classroom dynamic. I will go in more detail later. Or it can be even things that you use for storing your tools. For example, this teacher here, when we propose this problem of build something useful for your class, he say, okay, I have, how do you call this in English? This it's not ruler, it's called
tape measure.
Okay, tape measure, but it was always on the table. So he wanted to have a box to put it, to have it. So it's easy to find. So what he did was to design and fabricate a box for the tape measure. This is digital fabrication for kids. Digital fabrication with kids, in this case, well, it's the broader aspect of the continuum, and you can choose which are the parts in which the kids participate in this digital fabrication, for example, this design process model that I presented before. So in which are the parts that the kids participate? Of course, one of the important things is that you need to take into consideration which is the goals, the learning goals. Perhaps for achieving these learning goals, they don't need to go through all the design, all the steps in the design process model. You can just with the ideation is enough, or if you provide already some solution, just providing a way of fabricating the solution is enough. Or even they need to do a design in a computer, but you don't need to fabricate it because, for instance, you can later simulate it with other tools, for example, if we are talking about physics. So the important thing when you are doing this digital fabrication with kids is that the task that the students is doing for digital fabrication, it has to support the learning goals. And you need to reflect very carefully how this task support the learning goals that you have. One of the advantages of using digital fabrication between other methodologies is this idea of agency. In the end, when you are fabricating something, you build something on your own, and you feel a little bit more engaged in the process. So especially for kids, we have experienced that kids that they have difficulties in concentrating in school. When you tell them, okay, try to do this, try to fabricate this, and they see that they can go to the laser cutter and build something by themselves, this agency, this, okay, I have done this with my hands, I managed to do it, it's very rewarding for the kids and usually increase the engagement of the kids in the activity. And then finally, if we go to digital fabrication by kids, that is the other end of the continuum. In this case, we have the whole process of project-based or problem-based learning. So you propose a problem, and then the kids, they are going to use digital fabrication in order to solve it. I think that here is important also to emphasize the learning goals. So the learning goals shouldn't be fabricate something with the process that you are learning, because, well, this might be valid learning goals in some situations, but in general, or the goal that we have in this Fab Learning Academy is that you learn, you learn how to use the different process in order to achieve specific learning goals that you have in your class. So if you are teaching maths, they are goals related to math. If you are teaching music, they are goals related to music, or sometimes goals on different courses at the same time. So this is what I discussed here when I mentioned integrative education. Perhaps you want to teach aspect of maths, physics, and music in the same activity. And if you think carefully, that's possible. If you ask students to do, for example, a musical instrument, to fabricate a musical instrument, and you start defining, for example, the length of a piece of wood, and depending, and you ask them to hit the different lengths of the wood, they will have different sounds. Why is that? Well, you can ask your kids, or you can think why is you can discuss with your kids what is the relation between physics, music, and maths, and so on. Okay. So my recommendation when this is totally valid approach for digital fabrication, but important thing here is that please be clear in which is your learning goal, and that your learning goal shouldn't be focused that much in digital fabrication, but in the topic that you are teaching. Another advantage of using this process is that they don't learn also, let's say, they don't learn a specific topic of a subject, but they need to work in teams, they need to get help from others, they need to discuss with others. So usually these kind of projects, they bring not only learning about a specific subject, but it also brings some soft skills, collaboration, literacy, IT literacy, so on and so forth. And of course, they learn a little bit, or they learn on the design process and digital fabrication. But this is not the only learning. Okay. So during different days, we are going to try to cover and try to investigate what kind of activities you can do in each one of the different, how can I call it, different section of the continuum, and also what are the challenge in its part of the continuum. For example, in here, you are not going to involve the kids. So all the challenges related to educate kids on how to use the tools, you don't have them here. But on the other hand, one of the challenges is, okay, you create a tool that you want that your kids use. How do you engage them so they can use this tool? This might be one of the challenges. And when you do the design of the tool, is something that you need to take into consideration. I would like to focus now a little bit on this digital fabrication for kids. And actually, in digital fabrication for kids, you can build anything, any object that supports your teaching. And it can be any, for example, manipulative. This is very useful, for example, in maths, where you have abstract concepts. And we will see later why these abstract concepts are easy to achieve with tangible. So you have here, for example, some ideas of projects that actually you can get many of them in this CAD library that we linked last week on how to show different aspects of math, for example, fractions. But you can even build, it's not difficult to build a microscope that you can use in your science class. So you can build your own microscope, and there are many ideas on how you can do it. We have built here a very simple microscope. Of course, it doesn't have very magnification, you call it, yeah, but it was working for the purpose. And then I have seen here with the teachers that I have been working with that they have been also objects that support their classes in other ways. So, for example, they want to provide some feedback on ideas. So there are some groups that they propose some projects or some ideas, and then in order to other kids to not assess but provide feedback on that idea, they came up with this object that is formed by 4 different steps. One is question, the other one is like good idea, the other one is the heart of love it, and so on. So and it has a light. So you move here, you have a rail, and you can move the light, and you can put it in front of your desk. Okay, so do you think that perhaps I have some questions, or I think that this idea is great, or I love the idea, and you can move the slider wherever you think that is that it match your feelings on the presentation that your colleagues has done. And this is something similar. If I remember correctly, this was when kids feel stress, they could use this toy in order, they were for small kids, first graders perhaps, that they can squeeze the object and they turn a light on. And this light also show the teacher that, okay, this kid feel a little bit stressed, so it can react accordingly to that. So what I mean is that when we are talking digital fabrication for kids, it doesn't mean that you need to build something or create something that help you in math, that is the class that you are giving, or in physics or in history. But perhaps you can build something that support other aspects. Okay, so the background of this, and I'm not going to go in detail. You can access more information following the links. But the background of all these ideas come from Montessori and Flaubert. So Froebel, yeah. So they were the ones who start defining this the idea of this manipulative. So the idea that if you have tangible objects, it will facilitate the learning. For example, in the case of Montessori, it's very popular, these what they call these golden bits that you can use to visually represent the decimal system. So the numbers. And Froebel was the first one in history. He was the person who came up with the idea of having a kindergarten and having activities for small kids. And he thought to have these educational toys that he called gifts, so that kids, by exploring and playing with these toys, they learn at the same time. Actually, I think, or in my opinion, it's always nice when you present a concept to show something, some real use case. So if you are familiar with Professor Walter Lewin, he's a retired teacher on physics. And in all his class, he always have a life experiment. So this was a way of engaging students. So he first, or at the end, he present he make a representation actually of something. He used some tool in order to present some physical concept, or some physical concept. And he usually tests this object with himself. For example, this is one example showing the pendulum, and he throw I think it was 10-20 kilos mass, and he was on the other side. So he wanted to show that the pendulum has a certain period, and that it never can go and never can hit you. So, I mean, always, especially in science and technology, I like what one of instructors that we have here in the fellow wants to say, don't tell me, show it. So by showing some why this or how this formula that you have here has an impact in some specific process in nature is really, really important. And then why bring in manipulatives? Well, there are in the literature you can find many reasons. Most important one, kids require multiple embodiment to understand concepts, especially when you are young kids. It's impossible to think abstractly. So you need to have some kind of concrete objects that you can interact with in order to understand some complicated concepts. Concrete experiences are necessary for learning. So this is one of the principles of constructivism from Piaget. And then physical objects interaction form the basis for later abstract learning, what Brunner called enactive representation. So this is not something that we came up here, but it has a lot of history and a lot of pedagogy research in the background. Okay, and summarizing, why designing for kids? Well, first of all, you can build personalized and customized learning experience. Teacher adapts to preference and context. So you can adapt your own material to what you really need, and also you adapt it to how do you like to teach. So many times there are many of these subjects that you can buy from the industry, but perhaps they are not exactly that you are expecting, or you need to use it as the person who created think that you should use it, but perhaps you want to use it in a different way, and sometimes it's not easy to customize. Then agency, so it's something that you have built on your own, so you feel more comfortable. Inclusivity, so you can build something that can be used by different kids. So not only by a specific kid, but you can build a tool that can be used by diverse group of kids with different particularities. A variety of tools and economic reason. This is also very important. Many times the tools are not available in your country, in your area. You want to build something specific that is either is not available or is very expensive to buy. So you can try to fabricate yourself. Sustainability, of course, well, you can recycle. And for example, this microscope that I mentioned before, it was built using recycling parts from other from previous projects. And then, as I mentioned, it's not only for manipulative as such, but you can build tools that help you, for example, in other aspects. So tools supporting interaction, supporting engagement, or even infrastructure. So just build a shelf to put your tools. It's something that you can do with digital fabrication. And then, last but not least, preparation for you as a teacher when you want to work with kids. So if you start doing things on your own, fabricating something for your kids, you get familiar with the tools and process. You increase your confidence, and this is a very important aspect because many teachers, they don't feel confident on using the tool, so they don't feel, okay, I don't know how am I going to use this process if I cannot master this process, or I cannot, if the kids has a question, I cannot answer this question. So the fact that you are using it and you are building your own stuff, it will increase your confidence. Also, it helps to reflect and understand the potential of digital fabrication process and also test ideas. Other important aspect that is useful when you are going to prepare your activities, estimate the amount of time that it requires one process. And this is very important in digital fabrication. Sometimes you think, okay, cutting this in the vinyl cutter, it will take 5 minutes. But then when you start and you go through the whole process, you see, okay, yes, but you need to first set up the, find the material, set it up. Then there are two people, they cannot cut in parallel, so they need to go one after another. Then it's you need to weed it, and if there are very small parts in the weeding, it's going to take much more time. So all this, if you test it before, you can estimate better the time. Ensure having unnecessary material and resources. So if you build something, sometimes when you are in the school, you realize, oh, but I don't have transfer paper. How can I do that? Understand the challenge, and then explore different processes and methodologies and choose the one that better fits to the context. So you can try for the same problem, you can have different processes. So if you perhaps you want to explore beforehand which are the best process for your problem.